What's happening, Webster? This is 8th grade science, wave energy, goal 9 notes, and this is our last goal of the unit. So in this goal, what you will be doing is that you need to be able to understand how we see. So how do we see something? Understand how do we see color, and understand the parts of the eye that are necessary to allow us to see. Okay? If you're going above and beyond, you're able to understand why we're able to see color more easily during the daytime. So we are going to understand the anatomy of the eye and how light interacts with that anatomy in order to understand how we see something. So, how do we see? Well, we see by a series of steps involving the structures of the eye and the brain. We've got to have both, okay? But if we were going to see, what is the most important thing, then, yes, we do need a brain. Yes, we do need an eye, obvious. But we need light. Without light, there would be no sight. No light, no sight. Because the light reflects off of objects and into our eye. If we don't have that reflection, then we don't have any sight. We're not seeing anything. So parts of the eye that we're going to look at. We're going to look at pupil. We're going to look at iris. We're going to look at cornea, lens, and retina and optic nerve. These are really the parts that we are going to know so that we can understand how we see objects and how light is interacting with them. So the first part is the cornea. And the cornea is a transparent front surface of the eye, protects the inside of the eye, and it acts as a windshield. So it's this front cover that is transparent that allows all light to pass through, but it really protects the eye and keeps any debris out of it, and it also helps to kind of clean the eye of any debris that gets into the eye area. And there it is, just the very front part of that eyeball. The iris. This is the colored muscular structure that contracts and expands to control the amount of light that enters the eye. It surrounds the pupil. When people say, oh, you have blue eyes, or oh, you have brown eyes, or oh, you have green eyes. This is the iris that we're looking at. That's the colored part of our eye, and it changes depending on the amount of light, so that our eyes have just the right amount of light that go into them. The pupil. The pupil is in the middle of the iris, and it lets light in. It is the dark part of your eye, and it's actually dark because it's a hole. Sometimes we get confused because we think, oh, it's like a dark disc, but really it's a hole, and there's no light that comes out of our eye because we are not a source of light. And so the pupil is really the receiver that lets light in. And it is surrounded by a tough protecting muscle called the sclera. The lens. The lens is behind the pupil, and it perfects the image by refracting the light. What shape is it? It is convex. And what's cool about our lens is that it changes its shape so that it can focus the light in just the right area of our eye. And so it does kind of minuscule changes to adjust the focal point of the light. The retina. The retina is a layer of cells along the inside lining of the eye. It contains the rods and the cone cells. The rods see dim or bright light and see only black and white. So the rods are responsible for kind of adjusting the amount of light, and they see the very dim, the very bright light. Cones, on the other hand, see colors in 3 different bands, which we will talk about. So in this picture, we have the cone cells, which very much look like party hats or cones. And then we have the rod cells, which surprisingly look kind of like rods. So that if we could see those cells, that's what they would look like. So in this picture, it shows, here's the light that goes into our eye, and the next step is, passing through the cornea, passing through that pupil, passing into the lens, and it gets focused onto the retina. And here's that retina area kind of blown up. We can see there are 3 different kinds of cones. There's the red cone, responsible for seeing red light, green cone, responsible for seeing green light, and the blue cone, responsible for seeing blue light. And since those are the primary colors of light, that's really all we need. All other colors we see are kind of a mix of those colors of light. The optic nerve sends an electrical impulse to the brain and transmits the image to the brain. What's cool is that, say we see an image, okay, and so this image passes into our eye, and it actually gets flipped upside down by our lens, our convex lens, once it moves past that focal point. And the retina flips it right side up and recognizes the image. So the brain is responsible for turning it right side up, and the retina is kind of the receiver. The optic nerve is kind of the highway of information. Okay? And that information travels along the optic nerve to the brain, and then our brain responds to the images that we're seeing. So that is the basic idea. Again, our goal is so we understand how we see an image. So keep that in mind. One more thing. We have a blind spot. A blind spot where there are no rod or cone cells and where the optic nerve connects to the retina. This causes us to have a spot in each eye where we cannot take information or see. Oftentimes it's very small, I mean like 1 cell size small, but we do have one. We do have a blind spot. Your vision can be corrected by a variety of concave and convex lenses. This just changes the focal point so that the light can correctly focus on the right part of your retina. So again, there are lots and lots of different parts. We just need to understand how we see in steps. So light passing through our cornea, into our pupil, through the lens, then focused on the retina, through the optic nerve to our brain. So we need to know these steps. We need to understand how we see and how the anatomy of the eye works together with light, so that we can see objects. And here's Bill Nye to wrap us up.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
This is the eyeball demonstrator of science. And here is the eyeball. That's right. Your eye is shaped like a ball. And inside is the lens. The lens is the clear part that light goes through. And in your eye, the lens sits way up near the front, like this. Now, before light gets into your lens, we have to control the amount of light that comes into our eye. We don't have too much or too little. And we do that with something called the iris. The iris changes size, like this. By the way, the iris is the part of your eye that has color. Like someone says to you, you have blue eyes, or brown eyes, or green eyes. That's the iris, this part right here. Now let's say we're looking at something, maybe a kid on a stick out here. All right, the light from the kid on the stick goes through our iris, through the lens, to the back of our eye. And look, the image of the kid on the stick is upside down. Isn't that wild? The kid on the stick is upside down.
We heard you, Bill.
So our brains take the upside down images from both our eyes, turn them right side up, mix them together, and make sense out of what we see.
They're tough. They're gritty. They have potholes. The Streets of New York, with your host, William Nye.
Welcome to the streets of New York. Well, it's not really the streets of New York. It's an optical illusion. I mean, a truck is real, but all those buildings are flat. They're almost on one piece of material. See, it's your eyes playing tricks on you. It's not just your eyes, it's your brain. You know, they're connected. See? It's an illusion.
Next week, the streets of Plains, Montana.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.